It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm calling in from San Francisco, California. So we are in the digital world, but we are with all of you. So it's a great thing. Thank you very much to CPG for their partnership on this great event. We're looking forward to future working with you, and to recognize as well, I must, our esteemed member of the EastWest Institute Board of Directors, Mr. Ikram Siegel, who is a wonderful advocate and for our work and supporter of our work. As was mentioned, the EastWest Institute was created 40 years ago to prevent conflict between nations around difficult security issues by bringing people together, building trust, and delivering solutions that can work for all participants. In South Asia, we've been working under the leadership of Ms. Farah Amer, our moderator today, on the difficult problem of watershed management in the Himalayan river basins and what we call hydrodiplomacy as a means to address this challenge. Climate change is making water politics more acute and dangerous, and we are working to create dialogue among the affected parties, notably Pakistan, India, and China, so that secure water supplies can be guaranteed for all people. Another project, one that we recently concluded, called Afghanistan Reconnected, also involved our Pakistani and South Asian colleagues. The principal goal of this project was to develop approaches to improved economic connectivity between Afghanistan and its near neighbors, which included conversations with Russia, Pakistan, Central Asian countries, India, and Iran. So I want to discuss briefly the impact of COVID on the global economy. The main point is that the impact is still uncertain. The International Monetary Fund reports that there have been strong impacts on many countries' GDPs, but for the moment, the economies have stabilized. However, as we know, we are all in the early stages and everyone is fighting to contain the virus and to contain the economic damage. No one is doing that well, and in some ways, the industrialized nations are experiencing more difficulties because of their advanced economies, their older populations, the tendencies of younger people to be less careful about getting infected and thus threatening older people and their families. And of course, in emerging economies, the problem tends to center in high density, poorer areas of mega cities around the world. But while the pandemic has changed some things, it has just accelerated existing trends as well, geopolitical trends that will shape our next world order. The first trend is deglobalization. The logistic difficulties brought to light by the current crisis are already pointing to a shift away from global just-in-time supply chains. Yet, as economic difficulties mount, the inevitable growth of nationalism and my nation first politics will push companies to localize business operations that favor national and regional supply chains. The second trend is toward more authoritarian styles of government, and this relates to the third trend, China's geopolitical rise. Of course, this trend has been more than 3 decades in the making, but while China has successfully transformed itself into an economic and technological superpower, no one expected it to also become a soft power superpower. The crisis can change that, but if China's crisis diplomacy continues and the perception endures that Beijing has been far more effective than the rest of the world in its response to the outbreak, then this will be a further increase in their geopolitical rise. Of course, one of the things that has really changed is our realization of our dependence on the digital world. We are illustrating that on this call. In the past weeks, I've been on calls like this that have been hosted in South Africa, Singapore, Moscow, and Beijing. The two major challenges are time zones and the availability of high bandwidth connections. But it is amazing what we have learned about working together remotely. For South Asia, the big question is the future of digital development, of the digital economy. Here, the question involves the digital divide, it involves young people, it involves international companies, and it involves geopolitics. Let me take these up very briefly. When you think about the digital divide between the haves and the have-nots, both inside societies and across the world, 4 points come into play. The first is the absence of quality infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I'm just talking about the high bandwidth underlying connections, not only to the endpoints, but throughout the country and into the rest of the world. This remains a big problem of investment, and one where much more needs to still be done. The second point is endpoint access. So it's wonderful if you have fiber lines throughout the country or Wi-Fi, but if people don't have access to the more recent technology and laptops or notebooks and things like that, the benefits are much reduced. The third is domestic expertise. So in that case, there is a need for capacity, not just technical capacity, but also policy capacity, because the digital world brings together many, many policy challenges ranging from cybercrime to cybersecurity that must be dealt with complex across different players within different ministries and governments and across the government and the private sector. And that brings to the fourth area of the divide, the regulatory maturity. In many parts of the world, the regulatory regimes that exist reflect a previous situations where the government had a much heavier role in these infrastructures, and that needs to be matured and harmonized across countries. A second area, as I mentioned, is young people, and on the good side, South Asia has a huge youth population, which has a vast potential for internet adoption and innovation. There's a skilled and young workforce, especially in computer science and computer engineering. So digital industries can lead to greater job opportunities, and it's really got to be the growth area. The digital economy is the future of the economy, and the Global South is the future of the digital economy. So there is a great synergies and opportunities there. Of course, there is still importance of international companies, as I mentioned. So those companies recognize that the future of the internet is in the Global South. And I can give a couple of examples. Amazon, for example, is forming a team for its Amazon Web Services, its cloud hosting services in Pakistan, to help drive the adoption of cloud computing. Google will be investing $10 billion in India to help the country accelerate the development of its digital economy through its Google for India Digitization Fund. All right, so the fourth area that is involved in the digital divide is geopolitics. One of the areas this shows up is in the question about 5G networks. South Asia obviously should work to further build and unleash the potential of 5G and to boost its economy and societies in a post-COVID-19 environment. And one of the main 5G players, of course, is Huawei from China. And recently, for example, Mark Mung, from CEO of Huawei Pakistan, said that Huawei would support the government's Digital Pakistan initiative to move towards a diversified knowledge-based economy with the latest technologies like 5G, AI, and Internet of Things, and unlock new avenues to growth and innovation. But as you know, there's a great controversy about Huawei, because it is said by some in the West that it's a dangerous partner to have because they may be controlled by the Chinese government. And so what many countries are finding is that they are now caught in between the Chinese and the West in selection of things such as 5G technologies. The EastWest Institute did a report on the security aspects of 5G and other matters of cross foreign supply chains and foreign suppliers. And in our view, it's a mistake to ban a technology just because it comes from a particular country. All technologies come from every country. What's necessary is to utilize sound cybersecurity practices and manage the risks, rather than just think that you can fix them by just banning a country or a company's technology. But that's not easy to explain to the political side, and so we have the kinds of bans that we see not only in South Asia, but also in the US and Europe. And overall, over time, this will not help the development of the internet or the closing of the digital divide. So these are some thoughts that I have about the future of the digital economy, and I look forward to further conversation with everyone here. Thank you so much for inviting me.